Hey, conceptual physics students. One of the most important parts of learning about science in any way has to do with experiments. One of the things that sets science apart from other studies is that we very typically want to test out every different thing we learn in research or in class. And so during this year, we'll be doing many experiments. And in every one of these experiments, you'll be asked to think about the experiment ahead of time for a few minutes, and that's called a pre-lab. And so in class, you will have been already given this instruction for pre-lab and also an instruction sheet for writing up the labs when you're finished. So what I'd like to do is give you a few hints, because if you're going to do this for every single lab, might as well see some of the easier issues here. This is not intended to take very many minutes. So for instance, you will be doing your experiments in some kind of a lab book. And very possibly the lab book will look like this, a research notebook. If you open this up, all of the pages have something like this, and hopefully we'll have graph paper, and you can do the lab report in here. Also, if you need to make a graph, luckily the graph paper is there ready for you. So when you do the pre-lab, what you're going to do at home is some very simple things. Number one, just the title and date. Number two, the question. The question is, what is the problem? What are we trying to investigate here? And it's just a sentence for a question. Basically, this is telling why you're doing this experiment at all. A little bit of research and background. Now, I'm going to help you with this a little bit. The idea is, in order to prepare yourself for this, if there is an idea that you need to look up ahead of time, this is be very useful. For instance, one of the experiments we'll do early in the year will be about friction on a ramp. On almost all of the labs, what I'll do to help you for your research and background is I will write something called before class. And as you look at this, before class, let's see if I can. Okay, so for instance, this tells what I would expect at a bare minimum for you to look up. This says what is meant by the normal force. So I would ask you to write these in your research and background, plus whatever else might be very useful for you. Of course, during class, we'll be doing various experiments. And so that's part of the pre-lab. Now, what I will also think that is very useful, many students find that when they do the experiment, rather than writing down all of these questions and procedure issues, a lot of times it's very useful just to cut them and tape them in. So for instance, you'll use, let's scroll this back again. Okay, so you just use your scissors, cut this out. And if you tape this in your notebook, so somewhere after you've done the first part, you'll tape this in the notebook. Then what's very useful about that is that when you are answering your questions, you'll have numbers to refer to. And so that'll be a big part of the pre-lab. Let me give you a little example. So a student wrote the following pre-lab. So later in the year, you'll find that we're going to study about circuitry. And even if you can't read this very well, as you look at this, it says there's a research question. We are wondering what the current in a circuit is. Is it the same everywhere in a series circuit? Or a parallel circuit? This is kind of the research question. Now, notice what the person has done. This person has written a little bit of background, even telling where the information came from. Particular website. You can find the information from class notes or the textbook also. Then, as a part of the pre-lab, I would like a flow chart. Simply a few boxes that, as pictures, tell what you're going to do the experiment. Then there's a hypothesis. Hypothesis will be in the form of an if-then kind of statement. So for instance, this person wrote if you have resistors in a parallel, then the easier the current will flow. That's the way it's written. So this is a part of the pre-lab. Then there is data recording. So in this case, there wasn't a data table, but many times what we'll do is make an actual data table. So in order to make a data table, so let's say we want to place the time, the velocity, those kinds of things in a data table are many times useful. And one of the biggest issues is that in your pre-lab, if you have taped this in, the reader, that is the teacher, when you look at this, will know that number 4 or 5 has a particular question involved or command. So then I can look at this and say, okay, I know what number 2 meant. I know what number 3 meant. Remember, when you are writing up the labs, you'll be showing all your math work. So hopefully you understand some more details about the pre-lab. The pre-lab, remember, will only take a few minutes. It'll be the title and date, the question, a little research and background, which I will help you to figure out, a flow chart. So these are the biggest parts. The question, the hypothesis, these are just sentences and a data table. And then after that's finished, I'll put a stamp on your pre-lab and it will be ready for the experiment. I hope this helped.